Welcome to User Insights, a podcast series powered by UXArmy.
Hi Ruchika, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi.
I'm very pleased to welcome you on User Insights. User Insights is a podcast by UXArmy. The goal of User Insights is to spread the knowledge about user experience research in out there to the designers and researchers. Some of them are aspiring researchers and designers, and the idea is to spread as much as possible in terms of knowledge as far and wide. So usually we are spreading this information in form of video nuggets, short videos, to kind of spread some kind of education and awareness about the industry experts from the industry experts like yourself. And therefore, I am super pleased to invite you and on this podcast today. And I would like you to introduce yourself uh, to the audience. And I know that you have wealth of experience in the automotive industry, which is so good. And I'm sure there are people out there who would like to listen to aspects of this automotive user research in detail. So over to you.
Hi, Kuldeep. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me for this podcast. I have been in the industry for almost 15 years since I graduated, and uh, not only automotive, I've worked in like different areas like gaming or healthcare, and did a bit of airport design as well, long time ago. Um, and it's just been a fun journey. Um, Cars have been my world for last 10, 12 years largely. And I worked in like concept cars and production cars, and from startup scene to established companies where they've been making cars for many, many years. It's been a fun ride, and very, very pleased to be here.
Yeah, and I see in your profile that you have a lot of experience in different working in different countries. I see that you started your career somewhere in India, and then you moved on to countries like UK, where you are you are working with international brands of automotive, and I can imagine there's a lot happening there. Uh, we would I think the audience would really appreciate if you can spare some time unpacking the world of automotive research, especially when it comes to the UX research part of it. That would be really appreciated, I think, by our audience.
Yeah, automotive research is a very, very big area and quite intense as well, because anything that we design has to be road safe for our people and has to be really easy for the drivers to use. For passengers, it's slightly different because then it's more entertainment and comfort. But for drivers, it's their primary job is to drive, and everything else is secondary, assisting them in the drive, whether it's through passing information or entertaining through music or something like that. Um, and research plays a huge amount of role because it's the way we forecast what's happening in the future. Because automotive takes a long time, so we keep looking at UX trends, what's coming up, and then try and incorporate that early on within the life cycle of the car design and development phases. And then we try and also make sure that it's keeping in tandem with all the digital ecosystem that every human lives in these days, and see where it synchronizes, and how do we tie up these gaps to make the experience more holistic and seamless.
Yeah. I mean, now that you mentioned safety, I agree that every car ride we take is like a mission, like a flight that takes off. It's just that on the ground, with the amount of complexity that's involved, maybe the physics is different than the airline, but today's cars are highly connected. I know of cars that are not just self-driven. That's another direction of where the car industry is going. There is also a lot of discussion about the cars being connected to other cars, and this kind of thing. So have you seen offset onset of those kind of new technologies and new way of connected cars, the future of cars that it exists? That's so fascinating, that kind of world.
Yeah, I mean, connected cars have been there for last many years now, and the level of connectivity is improving and progressing day by day. So we live in our day-to-day life in the world of phones, digital devices, which have come from those dial-up things long, long time ago to now totally wireless, using voice to make calls and we use all of the similarly cars have moved on in similar way, where we used to look at connectivity as just first connection to for emergency calls or breakdown covers and things like that. But now it's become more and more like where I'm connected with another car and I can do a convoy travel versus I'm connected to my phone app and I can send stuff to my car while I'm on my couch. So my car experience is not limited to within car, but also away on my couch where I'm sending my navigation or sending details to my friends, and this is where we're going to meet, and sending them the address and things like that. Or I'm locking my car if I've forgotten and things like that. Those are basic functional side of stuff, but also creating communities where you meet friends and things or similar minded people, car enthusiasts, and having that, and then bringing that into car. Where recently I was looking at another car manufacturer where they were looking at sending in content in the car personalized to you to a very very high degree, looking at if you like, for example, a luxury brand like Chanel, let's say, and there is an event happening. So you are invited because you are owner of a particular car. You are invited to the Chanel event because you've been there once before, and it kind of tracks the kind of brands you like, and then you it sends you a personalized event in your car, so you can then connect and then attend that event. So it's becoming from very wide functional space to when you're not driving to a more social ecosystem when you're paused, and when you're driving it's allowing you to take all that distraction away and allow and focusing on the drive side of it. So it's multifaceted in terms of away from the car on your couch to in car when you're paused and when you're driving. It's very interesting.
Wow, it's fascinating. It's a world. It's almost a fantasy, or almost something like a dream kind of thing, dream space, I would say. So the car of the future sounds like like a totally fairy world where things happen on their own. So is it true to say that the car never sleeps? Because I still remember my car, which was like a 800 cc car in India, and I think I forgot about the car once it was parked. So it's like the way you describe things looks like the car is like always awake and wide awake.
Pretty much EVs especially don't sleep much. Even in combustion engine cars, which we use day to day, they also have different sleep cycles and power cycles. And if you leave your car um, without starting it for about 2 weeks or so, it goes to a deep sleep. Otherwise, which is why it takes a bit longer to wake up everything and preserve the battery. So when you start it, it can like go on. But EVs don't sleep much at all.
I
They are
see.
disconnected. They're looking for stuff all the time. They're listening to data, and they're awake, ready to go anytime. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not sleeping as much anymore.
Yeah, exactly, and it sounds so different, so very different axis, because at one axis you have Tesla Cybercab, which doesn't need a driver, and the other side everything is being worked for the driver's safety and driver's ecosystem. So I really wonder, do you see these worlds of experiences? Because these could be two different experiences. One experience is hands off totally when it comes to things like cybercab concept, And then there is another one where these are luxury cars like Mercedes and this kind of Land Rovers and so on. I am the BMW. So I'm not sure, like, how do you see these worlds? Like, are these converging, or one is going to finish the other one, or how do you see things going around when it comes to the participant, to a particular user?
Autonomy is a interesting space. So
Mm,
when we look at fully autonomous cars, few years ago I was working on one of them, on a fully autonomous car which had no steering wheel, nothing. It was level 5 autonomy, and I was working for about a year into research, early research,
okay.
back in 2016,
Hmm.
and we were looking at how you create trust in a driver to get into it. But actually, is we then reframe the question: how do we create trust in the passenger? Because the car is fully autonomous
Yeah.
and it's going to self-drive, and and even though it was fully autonomous, there's so many safety factors or human factors that we call in automotive research space that we had to look at, um, just around trust, or just around the kind of information the passenger would need at that time, um, was very, very interesting, because you're getting into the car and you are like, it's going to do everything for me.
Right.
How do I trust it? How do I know? And to answer those questions are difficult to answer, because every human is different, right? The way a Chinese user thinks, or a Japanese person thinks, or American thinks is
Yeah.
one so different, right?
Right.
So when we look at like global set of people who will be using autonomous vehicles, even there so much UX research is happening, it, that when we say, oh, there's robocar from taxi from Tesla, huge amount of work is happening there as well, in UX space, because user experience is not just about digital interaction, but also about physical interaction, trust, what you perceive, how do you get in, how do you see this as an extension of your travel,
Right.
um, and not just something you just get in anymore. It's not A to B transportation device only.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that the factor that you bring in now in the discussion is about how are the various human factors involved, and trust is definitely one of them.
Mm.
And it's no surprise that, since, like, it sounds like a decade ago you were working on things, and even today, like, if you see, it's very limited portions and very controlled portions of the world that these cars are being under experiment. Although I heard in China they already have taxis like this. At least there are some TikTok videos around, floating around. I haven't been in one, so I can't comment on that. But the aspect that you bring, it's a very important aspect. Like, what are the various factors when it comes to designing an in-car experience? What are the things? What are the major blocks to look at when it comes to a aspiring researcher, or somebody who is new in this field? What
Mhm.
will be your kind of a primer for them when it comes to
The-
entering this field of automotive UX research?
you don't have to be a petrol head to start off with. I wasn't
Okay.
one. I like
Okay.
cars and I like user experience.
Mm,
But I'm not obsessed with cars. I'm obsessed with user experience. And how do you create user experience without having a baseline assumption that this is how user will behave?
okay.
Especially when you work with new technologies or new areas of research, um, where no one has the answer. Um, one of the projects was, long time ago, was a see-through pillars. The pillars that we have in our car is see-through, so it can't be see-through because it's a structural
Yeah.
of within the car. But then how do you, like, it was a wraparound screen to make it see-through, but then you have parallax suddenly, and
Yeah.
you realize that it happens when you create that
Yeah.
prototype. And then how do you get away with solving the problem of parallax while driving,
Right.
safe way? And there's so many different things that we had to try and figure it out, and see how that could work. But all these things are interesting when you are working on one particular solving one particular problem. And there's no space for assumption. So as a researcher, I would just say go with a really open mind. You don't know what you're going to see. Um, what we see out in production cars is the now, but we work in cars take 2 to 4 years before they see the day of light. What you see 4 years later is what you're working on now. So the technology will move on, and you might be working on really great cutting edge technology of the current time to make it reality a few years later. So you really have to be open minded and ask all sorts of questions, whether it's silly questions or doesn't make sense, but ask, because there is no space for assumption. And try a lot of ABC tests we do to try and figure out the answer, and with different kinds of users as well, with different backgrounds, ethnicities, genders, to find like a common baseline that works for most.
Yeah, so it's a very different world of research when you are researching a mobile app, which is day to day retail, versus a car, which is an in car environment and out car environment, if I may. Um, but it also contains a lot of curious questions that fill my mind right now. Like, one of the things that comes to my mind is, what are the, like, do you always have to call people to sit inside the car and then give feedback? Is that something that you, or the car has to move when you are doing user research? It's kind of funny question, but it's
It's a
just part
valid
of
question.
it. Yeah.
There are various stages to the UX research that we do. So there's in early stages, we do a lot of benchmarking. We look at what are the production cars out there, or concept cars which have been released by different companies around the world, or devices, or what's happening in aerospace. It doesn't matter, but looking at like what's new as a trend. And that doesn't need you to be in a car. Like that's more like studying what's out there. Then we work with companies who are doing production parts and things for us. So we look at like technologies with different companies, and they're usually our partners or suppliers, to see how we can, what is going to work in what time frame for which car, and we can make that happen. And then you work with the limitations or framework of that. And if it's a new technology, then how we make the best experience out of that. And then there's the other aspect of UX research, which we look at, which is where we have driving simulator, and a user or various users sit, and we have various options and prototypes. And then we test all those prototypes in a driving environment, a simulated environment, to see what works really well. And a lot of times the answer is not A or B, but part of A, part of B. And then we kind of make a judgment call of like, what are the things working, and we amalgamate that and then come up with a really, really good solution which should work. Of course, we also look at differentiator factors, because all cars cannot be the same around the world, and they all have to have their own delight factor, factor, differentiators. And how do you create that in similar technologies that companies use? So we try and find those experiences as well, trying to find that. And then there's the other aspect where we try and run customer clinics or tests around the world with our customers, or similar to our customers, would-be customers maybe. And we try and show them what the UX looks like, what is their feedback, how do they perceive it, what works, what doesn't work, and try and make improvements from there. And then, of course, when the car launches, we get a lot of feedback then as well. So then we go through a loop of making changes, which are more iterative over a long period of time, to for the first few years of the car platform or something like that.
Yeah.
But all these research phases are different. They all have their own needs and wants, and different things are important at that stage. So the tool or platforms are just supporting finding the answer instead of anything else.
Yeah. So usually, I mean, these large systems, the one of the thing that's common with large systems or doing research for large systems, that these systems take time to develop. Like, for example, like it's not like the typical mobile app for e-hailing. It's even that takes a lot of time, but these cycles could be like 3 years, 5 years, and so on. So what's the typical timeline that a product takes from say research to a place where the concept, the human interaction part, especially inside the UX, the digital part is taken care, and things are set to be like okay, good to go.
Minimum 2 years is what I would say, bare minimum. That is when you're doing MVP in a very, very agile environment.
Wow, that's
And
that's like
yeah,
that's like on top of something that exists.
pretty much. Or you're creating, but in a very small, agile team, and
Yeah,
everyone's pitching in, and you're buying a lot of stuff and fixing and making changes or creating your own experiences, but a part of it, not changing topsy turvy from scratch everything. You're
correct.
not doing that. Um, but if you are looking at like what a lot of large companies do is creating software from scratch for in-car experiences, then it takes 3 to 4 years.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
that sounds like crazy timeline for only digital kind of space. Uh, because yeah, I mean, some people usually mistake agile for fast, and I think if
No.
they hear 4 years, I think they're gonna have some nerves. They're gonna catch some nerves for sure. Anyways, do you recall any situation or any incident in your career or heard of similar from your friends in the industry that when you had to send an update over, not necessarily in the companies that you were working for,
Mhm.
an update related to UX was sent over in a car, and then it turned out to be extremes, either it was a delight or it was turning out to be everybody's calling on the phone kind of thing.
It has happened, not very often. I've been very fortunate. It's not happened. We do so much testing beforehand that
Yeah,
we try not to have extremes, to be honest.
yeah,
But there are some things which maybe, like recently, I recall, we designed something for driver assistance features, which was very much around EU regulations to suit that and safety laws and things like that, and works well for European environment. But in US, it was absolutely not liked because over there you don't have these regulations, and they were like, "Why is it default so safe?" Or so slow. I
wow,
don't want this. I don't want this alert. I don't want that alert. Turn it off. Turn it off. And I don't want to go and turn it off every single time because that's how it was set up to meet the EU regs. So then we had to do a software change, um, only for America market because they don't, all the defaults were then reversed in a way. Of course, I'm just taking that as an example, not reverse, but we had to redesign stuff and all
right,
of that. But it was changed to suit the American customers because it they don't have this and they don't need to. And something which was we always try to design one thing for the whole global space, to try and minimize costs, maintenance of the software, versions, updates, all of that. It's quite challenging to have different versions of the time. But in this case, we had to, and it was an interesting experience, very stressful at that time. But
yeah,
yes.
imagine. uh, every market is very different, and it builds its own, brings its own challenge, not to talk about the cultural issues, but and the anxiety levels at minimum anxiety level of each market. Those kind of things, I'm sure they are factors beyond just the safety. I'm curious, like, I mean, UXArmy being a tools company as well, we have a platform of our own for doing user research. Um, Now, not going too much into UXArmy, I would like to just ask you what kind of environment when it comes to automation of user research? What
Mhm.
kind of things, you don't have to name a tool, what kind of expectations do you have from such platforms? And I'm not just asking this for the sake of UXArmy. I'm asking also in terms of the people who use similar tools or who don't use similar tools. Are tools a must, or life can move on without tools by conducting interviews, for example?
Interviews are helpful, and that's why we do customer clinics where we meet our customers and talk to them and try and understand. But you can't ask all the questions at one go in a clinic. It's it when we are creating something, we need to ask specific questions at that time, and which is why we do use a global platform for research as well. But that's when we go over there and ask our customers or similar customer types, like basically our archetypes, these questions. What do you think about this particular flow of interaction versus the other flow of interaction? What does make sense to you? And the way the Japanese res- person would react or respond would be so different from sometimes how an American person would say. Or a lot of times we find, yes, okay, we have found a common pattern. Everyone seems to like it. It works really well. The B option works for most people and it's not confusing. It's actually really clear. And then we go ahead with that. Sometimes we do a lot of reading between the lines and we use AI, which is built in these platforms, to understand, like pick up nuggets of information. Why is this decision made? Like, what's the thinking why this person is choosing that? And just to be able to go and look at that, a bit of information, that nugget of information is very helpful. Of course, it's not possible to go through like if I'm doing 16 people or 60 people, to go through 60 hours of data. In that case, it's that's when you need like a tool to be able to pull these things out for me, and then I can just watch maybe an hour of total content, which is meaningful and important for that.
Yeah. So do you think that this, like, how do you see this world of the tools evolving when it comes to, are there specific customizations that you see necessary for the world of automotive UX research? Do you see some customizations that are required,
Mhm.
which could help you better? So in your role.
Yeah, I think one could be very interesting is the simulator space. So right now, the simulator driving environment, which a lot of companies, all automotive companies, pretty much use in their day-to-day life, to develop UX experiences in there and to try different things. Um, it would be very interesting if virtually someone could sit in that and then try it. So instead of getting a person physically in the driving simulator, which we have to do anyways, but then I don't have my Japanese customer there suddenly.
Yeah.
And it's will be interesting if there was a possibility that I could get someone from Japan to experience that in a virtual setup. And that could mean like we're in a VR or AR, XR, like there's so many gradations happening, and
Yeah.
through different tools that we use in automotive, like Unity or Kanzi or whatever, like so much can be built, and then you put it in that space, and
Yeah.
then all you need to do is own a pair of VR glasses and then experience it there, and then try and learn from that data
Yeah.
instead of trying to do that from a physical simulator environment.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying A answer is better than B, like both have their own value, but just to be able to get that sort of information or learnings from different cultural backgrounds or different places where we sell our cars, that would be very interesting. And to be able to learn that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's something that has been crossing our minds here at UX Army. How to bring environments. Obviously, the AR VR has its own issues of technology. How could you fit a a simulator, a car simulator on a computer screen. That could be a near term question. And of course you can't get all kind of the haptic feedback that you get from the
Yeah.
things, because you are operating the keyboard and not really car controls.
Mhm.
So, and you have a mouse to play with, so it's a bit different environment, but something close can be thought of. But that's more on the innovation space and tech
Mhm.
space. I just want to wrap up by asking you the last question that I have here, which is like, when somebody is transitioning or thinking of transitioning to automotive, and I remember you gave this advice to don't assume anything, but are there any specifics that you would like to advise someone who is trying to get into this space or has just entered the automotive user research space?
Um, uh, be strong enough for the long run. There's no instant gratification in automotive. It's like a long, very, very long term um, output, sort of like you're creating a big product, 10,000 parts, 10,000 products come in together to make one big product. It, it's not going to be quick. There's going to be lots of challenges en route, and you have to get over those challenges and not get held back and feel disheartened very early on, like, oh, I designed that and it didn't happen. No, there's a lot more things which do happen, but you
Yeah,
have to learn to adapt and be agile, be very much like water in a way. And when you see the car come out 2 years later, 3 years later, 4 years later, whenever it comes out, the joy that you feel, that, oh my God, all those years and sleepless nights that I have given to this has come alive, and it just makes everything worth it. And I have experienced it a few times, and I've had heartbreaks when the company has closed down, and 3.5 years later, I'm like, what? That car is never going to come out, is never going to see the day of light. I've had heartbreaks as well. So it's like a relationship you have with the cars. Sadly to say it like that, but it is. You live that world for a long time, and it's very joyful. So it's the long ride. So don't give in very easily, but for very small things.
yeah, they say good things take time, and one of the virtues that I see in researchers is about patience, because you can get equally frustrated when you get a participant which is like who's not really opening up and this kind of thing. So I think uh, I think researchers need their own dose of training on patience, and patience is expensive nowadays. So it's something that that's a soft quality I think all researchers must have, and much more so in the world of automotive. Yeah, I think we have come towards the end. So of this, unfortunately, we would have chatted forever. But then takes time, and we have to look forward to other things. So I would just want to thank you a lot for this for coming over on our platform and helping the us and also the researchers out there who want to get into this automotive space of UX research. It's challenging, but the nice thing to hear is it's not really going away so quickly, and because there are discussions about at least in the pure digital space, there are discussions about, yeah, I mean, everything is a cliche and commodity now. I'm sure that world where you work have lots of challenges still to be fulfilled, especially in terms of in terms of human computer interaction. So it's something to stay, is what I feel personally. Of course, things are changing faster than we
Yes,
think.
at least for a good number of years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ruchika,
Thank
and
you for having me. Really appreciate it.
no
Yeah,
problem
thank
very
you.
much. Yeah, so see you and have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of User Insights. We hope you gained valuable insights from our conversation.